everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Connection is key. How do you build rapport with your audience? And in the space of public speaking, presentation skills, training, facilitation, that connection with your audience, that ability of the trainer or the speaker to connect and build rapport with their audience is so important. Without connection, you may struggle to have impact. So Peter Jude's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach. And my purpose in life is to help people be confident and effective in their presentation, in their public speaking skills, so that you can make the difference that you want in your world, in your communities. So why build rapport? Why build rapport? Rapport is how we connect with the audience. When you're in rapport, you just know that they're listening to you, they want to know more, there's empathy, there's exchange of ideas, the energy is positive. When you're in rapport, people trust you. You can generate trust. And when you generate trust, people are more open to your message, to your ideas. They're more open to change. Rapport and trust and connection helps you build credibility. And credibility is required when you ask people to do something different. Where do you get the credibility to ask me to follow you, Peter? Where does your credibility come when you ask me to follow your financial plan or to change the way I manage projects? Where does your credibility come? And rapport and connection helps you build your credibility. It's one of the many things in a credibility stack. Helps you demonstrate reliability. You're not just a flash in the pan. You're not just a fly-by-nighter. You're there for the long haul. You're there for your audience, for your customers, for your clients. And when you're in rapport, when you connect, you get to that place where people give you permission to challenge them. They give you permission to take them on a journey. They give you permission to teach, to train, to share your information with them. If you're not in rapport with your audience and you start to teach, you may get pushback, you may get rejection, you may get resistance. So when you're in rapport, you kind of get that inferred permission. All right, I trust you, Peter. You've connected. What have you got to share with me? I'm prepared to listen now. So there's some fundamental reasons for building rapport. So how do we build this trust? Just a few ideas, Know what you're talking about. Be knowledgeable in your area. Be able to deal with questions. And if it is maybe a minute niche question, know where to get the answer if you don't have it at your fingertips. Do what you say. Walk the talk. Be consistent. A couple of examples that I use all the time are the time management expert who starts late or who runs overtime. The financial planner who talks about the importance of investing and only buying appreciating assets, who drives a $150,000 Mercedes or a Porsche. Clearly, that would not be where you would invest your money. So they're telling you to do one thing, and on the other hand, they're doing something else themselves. Have some credentials and experience. Where do your credentials come from? What's your background? How long have you been working in that industry? Reveal your vulnerability. How did you get to this level of expertise? My vulnerability, most people on the webinar know, is that I'm a person who stutters. I'm a person with an extreme fear of public speaking, someone who avoided public speaking for much of my life, chose careers, made choices based on not having to speak. And moved through that fear to doing public speaking as my living. My vulnerability, my struggle, share your struggle. Show people that there can be light at the end of the tunnel. And be authentic. Don't be fake. This is not a performance. This is the real authentic me, with my bald head, my big nose, my pimples, my big ears, my warts, my imperfections. One of the mistakes that people do when they move into the public speaking role or the training, they've got all this expertise, they've got this experience, and then they come on stage and they become almost polished, perfect as a performance. Your public speaking, your training is not a performance, and that lack of authenticity will not help you with that connection and that rapport. You won't gain trust. So one of the things we can do to build that connection and rapport is make sure you do a lot of preparation. And one of the things that I teach in public speaking is that the performance, the webinar today, my face, what you see, is the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, around 80%, is the preparation you do. And Robert Schuller remarked that extraordinary performance is often preceded by extraordinary preparation. So I think 80% of every training session, 80% of every conference speech is what you do before you go on stage. What you do before you turn on your Zoom or your WebEx meeting or your Teams meeting. And this is the preparation in relation to connecting and building rapport. So here's some tools to help you do that. Your preparation. Know your audience. Who's going to be in the room? What are the demographics? What are the ages? Are there any cultural nuances you need to be aware of? Do you have to tone down your language? What are their expectations? What are the problems that are keeping them awake at night? What are the difficulties they're experiencing in their lives, in their businesses? What's holding them back from achieving their goals or attaining their key performance indicators? And how does your message help them achieve those goals or those key performance indicators? What's their values and beliefs? Do you need to tone down some of your strong opinions? Do you need to pick the right stories to meet that audience? I work with health professionals and also disability professionals, sometimes aged care, so nursing homes. I also work with financial planners, superannuation consultants, accountants. And more recently, I've done a lot of work in the mining and resources sector. 3 different groups, 3 different values, 3 different organisational cultures. So the words, the language, the stories that I share will vary with different groups. So I have a palette of life experiences, of stories, of examples, of case studies. And within that palette of experiences, I can pick those that resonate with the mining sector. And I can pick those that work with the health and disability sector. And the other set for the financial, accounting, superannuation sector. just delving a little bit further into this concept of your preparation. So use the language that your audience can understand. And it's about, speaking their jargon, and be careful with jargon. Lol, lots of love, laughing out loud, means different things to different people. PTO, please turn over the page. Or as a farmer's son, it's the power takeoff on a tractor that drives the header, that drives the baler, that drives the slasher, that drives the mower. Make sure you speak the jargon. And I mentioned mining sector versus accounting sector. As a health professional, 30 years in the hospital health pathology sector, lots of stories that work really well with nurses, doctors, health professionals. They don't work so well with the mining sector. But subsets of that do. Universal precautions, health and safety, the quality control that happens in a pathology lab, and the attention to detail is so important for engineers and project managers within the mining sector. So the ability to use the language and the jargon and understand those stories that work well with your audience is so valuable. This will help you connect and build rapport. I have a friend and colleague who also works with the mining sector a fair bit and has no connection with the mining sector at all, has not worked in the sector, is not an engineer. And when they start their presentation, one of the things they talk about is growing up in Kalgoorlie, a gold mining town, and playing in some of the mine sites. And that story at the beginning of his presentation builds rapport and connects with the audience. And the aspects of his childhood growing up in Kalgoorlie into a young man just is enough to help build trust and rapport. What story are you going to use? What language are you going to use that lets the audience know that you've taken the time to know a little bit about them? And of course, another way we can do this is to pay your audience a cultural compliment. The way we exchange business cards can be really, really powerful. And, with our Southeast Asian neighbours, the two-handed exchange of business cards, one of the mistakes that we do as Australians is we reach out with one hand and grab it. And that's a little bit disrespectful. So if someone offers you their business card, or you're in a shopping centre and they return your credit card with two hands, the correct thing to do, the polite thing, the cultural, intelligent thing to do is to receive it with two hands. Pre-COVID, I travelled Australia a lot, and wherever I went, I took the time to research and find out who the traditional landowners are. So at the start of my presentation, I can always acknowledge the traditional landowners. And I can tell you the number of times that someone has come up to me and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you did that." In fact, I myself am a Yorta Yorta man from Shepparton. I myself am a Dja Dja Rung person from Bendigo. And since COVID, I've moved up and down the West Coast in the Pilbara. And so when you go to when you go to Karatha, it's the Nullama people. When you go to Newman, it's the Neapali people, but also the Madu people walk these lands. Port Hedland would be the Kariyara people. The importance of connecting and paying your audience a cultural compliment. I remember going to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, Melbourne, heart of Australian rules football, and a UK British comedian, Mark Watson was his name, started his presentation, his comedy routine by talking about AFL football with knowledge, with comedy, who was going to win, who was going to be the wooden spooner, spoke knowledgeably about some of the controversy that was happening, some of the players that had misbehaved from certain teams. And before he went into his comedy routine, and this was funny, he had the audience in the palm of his hand because he was speaking Melbourne language, Victorian language, AFL language. And he must have spent significant time, research, speaking to people just to build that expertise. What can you do to pay your audience a cultural compliment? It'll really hold you in good stead and raise that connection and that rapport. Some tools to help you build rapport. Some simple tools, and there are more. So this is about me connecting with you, building rapport. Use a conversational style. So just have a chat. The Aboriginal term is just have a yarn with the people in the room. Have a yarn with your audience. The reverse is being a lecturer, telling people how to suck eggs, pushing messages down people's throats. Tell stories, share stories, stories that people can relate to. When I tell the story of Mark Watson, the British comedian that started a comedy routine that I attended at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, that's a story that I'm sharing. And it was absolutely amazing to see the whole room connect and the way he worked the room. And he is a professional comedian. You'd expect them to be able to do that. But I've also seen Seinfeld, when he came to Australia, he spoke in Brisbane and he gave a couple of gags referring to a particular biscuit, and no one in Australia knew this biscuit. So that particular gag flopped, and he wrote about it because he just didn't do enough research. Had he substituted maybe an Australian biscuit, maybe a granita biscuit, then it may have worked. You can use these stories to build rapport. I always come across as humble. My view is that the collective wisdom in a room, I had 14 people on Friday in thinking and speaking off the cuff workshop. The collective wisdom in that room is more than mine. So when people challenge me or ask a question, I don't tell people they're wrong or that they're mistaken or no, that's not the way you do it. I welcome that feedback. I welcome that different idea, that divergent ideas. I welcome the discussion and the challenge. Use inclusive language so together we can make a difference. What are you going to do to make a difference to your clients? How can you use that in your journey? And also the non-verbal communication needs to be inclusive, needs to be accommodating, needs to be welcoming, as opposed to closed, maybe aggressive type gesture, or the fig leaf, which is the passive shoulder shrink, hands go down and we avoid eye contact. So make sure that your non-verbal communication adds to your ability to connect and build rapport with your audience. One of the things I ask people when I do my non-verbal communication workshop is, are you aware of what your body says when you walk into a room, when you walk into a meeting, when you walk into a job interview and you're about to present, you're about to talk, you're about to sell your credentials at a job interview? Really powerful to know that your non-verbal communication is credible, it's inclusive, and it helps you connect and build rapport. Be aware of noisy, non-verbal communication that bounces up and down. Be aware of repetitive gestures that after a while don't mean much at all. Some simple tools. to help you build rapport and connect. Be authentic and genuine. I mentioned about being fake, and it's not a performance. It's the authenticity and the genuineness that will really help you become relatable, show your honesty, and that builds trust, that leads to connection, that leads to rapport. And it was Oscar Wilde who quoted, "Be yourself, because everyone else is already taken." So I need to be Peter Dew, not someone who's very, fancy. I don't have a great radio voice. I'm not John Laws. I'm not famous. There are other people who are presentation coaches who are famous. They're radio announcers. They've been on TV. There's just me, bald head, big nose, pimples, warts, imperfections. Another thing that I think is really important to build rapport and to connect is to have the right attitude. And I use a little acronym, and that is communicate with care. Simply stands for conviction. Do you believe in your own message? Do you believe in what you're asking people to do? Or are you just going through the rhetoric? Are you just going through the process because you've been told by head office, I have to share this message? I think it's a stupid message, but my role is now to share this message. Because you don't have that conviction, that belief, people will understand you're not really invested in it. You don't really believe in what you're saying. Therefore, your ability to connect and build rapport and have impact, so create change, will be diminished. The A in communicate with care is the right attitude. 6 a.m. in the morning pre-start meetings, the person leading the pre-start meeting may be thinking, I'm tired, I've got a busy day ahead, there's lots of other things, I'm flying home tonight, can't wait to see my kids. But the attitude needs to be, right now, there's no place I'd rather be. In this 30-minute webinar, there's no place I'd rather be than sharing my time with you in this virtual world. When I did my 7-hour workshop on Friday, weekends coming, Friday, no place I'd rather be than spending my time with those 14 people. That needs to come through. Your passion, your body language, your enthusiasm to be there. The R stands for responsibility. We can change people's lives. Health and safety, someone hears the message, you do an update on snake bites, snake activity, someone gets bitten, has just been refreshed on snake bite first aid, you've saved someone's life. Someone struggling with stress, mental health issues, fatigue, and you do a mental first aid training course, and they know or they recognize someone struggling, take them aside, check that they're going okay, you've saved someone's life. Someone struggling financially, transitioning to retirement, don't have enough money, you do a financial seminar, you give them some absolute nuggets that they now see they've got this, you've changed someone's life. Every time you speak, it's a privilege. With that privilege comes great responsibility. And the E in the communicate with care is have the right energy. Don't be flat. Don't just knock it off as quick as you can. All right, we'll get this done really quickly. Communicate with care. Another thing that people forget is that I've finished my presentation. It's done and dusted. Keep the connection going, keep the rapport going afterwards. Deliver what you promised. If I take a question on notice, let me get back to you. Make sure you get back. Remain behind. Friday, I stayed till 4:30, workshop finished at 4. I had 3 people that stayed behind and kept talking to me. Be the last person to leave. Follow up as promised. Ask for honest feedback. I'd love your feedback from this webinar. I'm getting feedback from Friday's webinar. And add value. Give people free stuff. This webinar is free. I'm going to sell you some more free webinars. This is yours. This is me continuing adding value to you in the area of public speaking. So keep the connection going, keep the rapport going, and avoid rapport destroyers, acting like the expert. I am the guru. I am number one. Using the wrong language and the wrong message for that audience. So this is what the audience expects, and this is what you deliver, and there's a mismatch between expectations and communications. Overuse of acronyms, LOL, laughing out loud, telling bad jokes. My sense of humor is bad. My children tell me all the time, dad jokes. And inflated ego. I've done this, I've achieved this, I've been doing this for 25 years. Yeah, don't let some of these surface to destroy that hard-earned rapport. Keep the humbleness, keep the empathy, keep the listening going during your seminar. So why build rapport? Helps you build trust, helps you connect. Remember, the preparation is really early, is more important than the presentation. I've shared with you some tools to build rapport, those cultural compliments, use the right language, communicate with care, keep the connection going afterwards, avoid rapport busters. What's coming up? 7 ways to make your presentation more interesting, 22nd of Feb. Body language mistakes, repetitive gestures, bouncy gestures that don't mean anything. 8th of March, 7 ways to prime your audience. So this is helping build rapport up front. So when people walk in the room, they're already salivating. They're already in a high state of anticipation. 21st of March. Workshops coming up, face-to-face, thinking and speaking off the cuff, next Friday, 18th of February. Winning presentation skills in Karratha, 14th of March, and off the cuff, 15th of March in Karratha. Because COVID is now moving into WA, I'm moving much of my workshops online. So I share these with you. Winning presentation skills. This is an online live workshop across 4 90-minute sessions. Normally a 1-day workshop. Nobody does Zoom workshops for 1 day. So 4 90-minute sessions, thinking and speaking off the cuff, 4 90-minute sessions, and effective public speaking for the mining sector. 4 90-minute sessions. Finally, if you need to reach me, feel free to contact me, Facebook page, mobile phone, email. I'd love your feedback on this webinar. So remember, the rapport and connection with your audience is really important. What it does is open us up doorways. It enables you to put new ideas forward. It enables you to ask people to follow you, to change their behavior. If you don't connect, if you don't build rapport, it could be that you're just shoving messages down your audience's throat and you get pushback, you get resistance, and you don't have the impact that you want. This is Peter Dew from Public Speaking Dynamics. Bye for now.